yourself. We want to make sure that Richard and Eric are the only two that we can see, so don't turn on your cameras for now, but they do like it if you speak up, right? So go ahead, raise your hand, come off mute, ask the question. You have the chat, so please go ahead and do that. If you need that live captioning, go ahead and turn that on. I have found that that sometimes is very helpful. So make sure you just go into the more and then go into your live captions and enable that, turn on the live captions for yourself. As Richard was kind of hinting at, we are giving away $25 gift cards throughout for every session. And what we're doing is I'm looking as the moderator, I'm looking at questions, I'm looking at comments, I'm looking at that interactivity. So please make sure that you are asking those questions, get in there, and it'll be considered for that $25 gift card. And of course, there's always that grand prize that we have at the end of the day. And you'll be selected by doing the survey. So make sure you do that survey because we want to know exactly what's going on. I'll throw that link into the chat. Now, you know we can't do anything without sponsors. So please, if there's any questions for any of our sponsors, reach out to us, put that in the survey. We'll make sure that they get to you. But I've known a lot of these guys for many years, and they do a really good job around the Microsoft 365 stack. And here's that survey link. I'll make sure it gets in there. Yes, we're doing Surface Laptop Go for the grand prize today. So without much further ado, in fact, I'm going to stop presenting and let Richard and Eric, they're going to talk about Teams meetings, I should say, Teams calling meetings and devices and what's new with it. So there's a lot of great information. And of course, Microsoft, we're always changing and adding features. So this is like a never-ending story, right, Richard and Eric?
Richard updated this morning. There's a new blog post.
I kind of heard. So, all right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Thank you. And please, everybody, make sure you're asking questions and getting the most out of this. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. So guys, thank you guys for coming today. My name is Eric Marsi. I'm a Teams MVP and Systems Engineer at Cloud Revolution. And then Richard, he's a Teams MVP and he's the Director of Technology Development at T2M. Today's agenda is going to go over just a quick introduction of myself and also Richard. And then we're going to look at what's new with calling meetings, devices, and management. We'll kind of have Q&A throughout. So if you want to unmute during the presentation, feel free to unmute, ask away questions. Don't be hesitant to not do that. We'll have questions at the end in case you want to wait to the end. Choice is yours, and go from there. Looking at introductions. My name is Eric Marsi. I am from Barberton, Ohio, so not from the Minneapolis area. Hopefully one day if we ever get back to in person, I could see you guys and say hi. Was an MVP as of June last year. Hopefully I'll get the renewal for this upcoming year. And I'm also the systems engineer at Cloud Revolution, and I lead our Teams meeting rooms practice for the organization. Tons of certifications. Some of my hobbies involve reverse engineering, security research, electronic skiing, and four-wheeling. And then my social media is there on the bottom. Recently launched my new website from my old ucit.blog. So if you go to the old links, they'll still go to the new one. And everything else. And with that, I'll let Richard.
Hey, everyone. Richard Brennison. I'm from beautiful Minneapolis, Minnesota. As mentioned before, technology director of tech. I don't know what the heck my title is. I don't know what I even do on a day-to-day basis. Doesn't matter. Basically, I love Teams. You can find me online. And if I'm not here, like, honestly, today's the nicest day we've had in like 4 months, it feels like. I would have been on a golf course. So if anyone on this call is in the area and ever wants to go golfing, I'm always up for a golf buddy. Just FYI, just gonna throw that out there right now. All right, let's jump into this.
So let's go ahead and look at what's new with calling. So a new feature that they've added to Teams calling is music on hold for Voip and Pstn calls. Previously, they had added custom music on hold, but it was only just for Pstn calls. They have now expanded that to user-to-user calls within Teams.
And the other, go ahead.
No, good.
I was just gonna say the other big change that's here also is before music on hold would only work when you put a person on hold. It would not work in consult and transfer. So you were always introduced to this super awkward silence on a consult and transfer. The number of people who hung up during consult and transfer was astonishing because they thought they were disconnected. So
Yep, because it just went towards silence.
yeah.
Quite fun. So it's nice to have that working now properly. You have the ability to do custom music on hold, which we covered last time. And then also, if you want to change any of the policies, that's part of your calling policies inside the Teams Admin Center. By default, it is enabled, but there are some scenarios where you may potentially want to disable music on hold. So those options and those settings are controlled via the calling policies.
And the other option is also user controlled. So if you want to, for some bizarro reason, to give the end user control of music on hold, you could do that. I would never do that. I don't trust my end users. But.
No. And keep every control you can out of the end user's hands if possible, because then it's not working.
Exactly.
So up next, we have some direct routing changes. This is big if you're utilizing direct routing in your organization, and please pay attention to this because without looking at this and taking notice to this, your direct routing environment could stop working come June. So if you guys have done a direct routing deployment before, you know that you have to deploy the Baltimore Root Trust CA certificate on your SBC. And that is what pretty much tells your SBC, hey, any certificate signed by this certificate authority is trusted. And that's what they use for the Microsoft Teams service side where your SBC connects to. They are now requiring that the DigiCert Root G2 cert be added by June. And that is going to be utilized for all new certificates on their end going forward. But they still want you to have the Baltimore Root certificate in there and also have the DigiCert. So it's as simple as importing that certificate to your SBCs, but it is something you guys do need to manually do. Additionally, I believe this may have actually already taken effect. If not, it will also come in June. The replace a SIP header will stop being processed by Teams. So Microsoft is removing support for that. So you do have to modify your SIP messaging from your SBC to Teams for that to be updated. Additionally, they are deprecating some FQDNs such as SIP all and SIP all.pstn hub for the government side as well. They want you using in audio codes world classification rules and have it pointing your proxy addresses to SIP1, SIP2, SIP3.pstn.hub.microsoft.teams.microsoft.com. So they do not want you using that SIP all anymore. That will also be in full effect by June if it has not hit your tenant already. If you do want more specifics, reach out to your SBC's vendors documentation. I know Audio Codes has done a write-up on this already. On all the changes you need to make to their SBCs, and they've also updated their deployment documentation to include those changes. So big one there.
And Eric, what happens if they don't do this?
It will break.
Yeah. So this is one of those ones that should be flashing red. If you have a direct routing deployment and you've not looked at these items, you need to look at these items before June. Otherwise, you will have a bad afternoon.
We're not going to make the guarantee that it won't stop working, but something may break for sure. Some updates around PowerShell. Last time we covered that they were working on modernizing the Teams PowerShell commandlets. As of now, the 4.2.0 PowerShell module is GA. Older modules are going to be deprecated. So if you're running Teams 2.3.1, 2.6.2 preview, 3.0, any of those modules, they will stop working. They started rolling out that blocking change already in April. They are expected to have that completed by June when they fully deprecate the old Skype for Business Online infrastructure. TLDR, Skype for Business Online is still running today. So fun one there. But the big thing behind this is that the old modules utilize a service called OCS PowerShell Web Service. Now, any of you guys that have been around since Skype for Business Link, even the OCS days, there was a service you can use to remote PowerShell to your front end pool. And they pretty much took that, copied and pasted into what became Link and Skype Online. And then the back end of the Teams Admin Center, which is why they were originally having issues with getting new features to the Teams Admin Center, and also the back end of your Teams PowerShell module was utilizing the service. So Microsoft went through, they built all brand new APIs, which Richard did write a great blog post on how to, what those APIs are, and if you need to use those APIs directly, you can do that. And they rewrote the entire module to use those new backend APIs. And so now instead of touching the OCS PowerShell web service, you're now going right into Microsoft's private APIs. There is no public documentation of those because it's not necessarily graph APIs. It's just a Teams Admin Center tenant API that this is utilizing.
And for any consultants who are on the call, if you do spin up a new tenant for whatever reason, got a new customer, you're doing a migration, whatever the case is, all new tenants are have this all turned off by default now. So you will not be able to connect with the old PowerShell modules.
Yep. And if you had a Skype for Business Online tenant at one point, so that would be before September 2019, you still have this today. I do have that validated that this still works in the old PowerShell modules. The downside with this is that there are some commandlets that are very inefficient by them using the APIs. And I'm going to put very with an underscore there. Some commandlets, especially around like list locations, sometimes took 3 seconds before with the old PowerShell module. One of my colleagues just recently did a test, and now it takes over 3 minutes for it to run. So some of the commandlets do run and operate a lot slower with the module, but they'll only get better with time. So just keep in mind, if you're doing anything in Teams, run an update module, Microsoft Teams, and make sure that you're always running the latest version to stay ahead of the changes. So we covered before that cfutil. So cfutil is a user call forwarding management utility for Skype for Business Server. We call it cfutil, but in a way, it's just call forwarding settings. Is now in the tag. Previously, we covered that was now in PowerShell via the set CS user calling settings. This is now available in the tag. Again, because they're using those modernized APIs for PowerShell, it's very easy for them to build this into the tag. So we're going to start seeing a lot more, I'm going to hate saying this, but feature parity between PowerShell and Teams Admin Center without large delays between those going forward. So really exciting. What this does is if you've ever gone into your Teams client and you've adjusted your call forwarding settings to say, hey, I want to simultaneously ring some other users if I get a call, I want to enable group call pickup, all these other things, the admin had no control over that. So when you're building service accounts or anything else that you need to be able to modify this, or you have a CEO that, hey, they're out of the office, we need somebody to quickly go in and change something on their call forwarding settings, the admin now has the ability to do that from the user's management page. So you can see here on the right-hand side, I went to a user's account. I simply clicked on the voice tab, and you have all your call answering rules down here, and you can change the call forwarding settings there. There are some options so that if it's unanswered, you can either forward to voicemail. By default, that already happens. But if you want to, instead of sending to voicemail, you want to send to shared voicemail, anything, you can set that via these settings. So I do have a quick little demo to at least show you guys what this does look like. Can you guys see my Teams Admin Center here? So
yes.
If you go over to your users tab and you go to manage users, I have a plethora of test accounts and stuff in my tenant. If I go to a user, for example, and I go over here to the voice tab, you can now see that you have this, instead of just outbound calling, you now have this call answering rules section inside the Teams Admin Center. And by default, it's just going to ring my devices. And then after, 20 seconds, where's it going to go? It would send a voicemail. You're able to go ahead and either, just immediately forward these calls to some type of destination. So you can say, if somebody calls this person, we don't want this user getting any of the calls. Let's just send it to, forward to another person. Let's send that to Eric. And at that point, it's going to send it to Eric. So then that way, that person's getting that calls. You also have other things such as simultaneous ring to specific users. So I could say, hey, if this person gets a call, also ring Eric, and when that person gets a call, they're going to also get a ring. Eric's also going to get that call going to him as well. So it's similar to like being part of a call queue, but not being part of a call queue. A great way to think about this also would be like a shared line appearance in a way, but not directly, where you can have multiple people receiving the inbound calls. The nice thing with this is that this is all managed from inside the Teams admin center now, and you don't have to deal with anything PowerShell or actually sign out users' account to make those changes. So
if you're an Uber nerd like me and you want to know how they're doing this programmatically, this is the beauty. You can always hit F12 in your browser now, and you will see the actual command that is being issued against the server, and you could go copy and paste that command and put it into your favorite tool. You could legitimately write your own UI. We've done that for a customer where they didn't want to expose the Teams admin center to users, but they wanted to be able to control call settings. So it's the bottom one. Yep, there you go. So under payload, right there you can see, and if you it's a little small, but you can see that these are all the call forwarding settings. So you can see where they're going, who they're going to, and then if you click back on the headers tab there.
Sorry, I'm bringing this up to also show the PowerShell next to this.
Yep. But so you see it there, but then, so there's the payload that's sent. And if you click on headers, you see the actual URL that it was sent to right there at the top, request URL. So you can legitimately just pick that up and throw it around. And yeah, Brian, this is in GCC. There's a whole laundry list of things that launched into the GCC this morning. So Kim has their hand up. Kim, did you have a question?
Sorry, I was double muted.
That's right.
So yeah, a quick question. I want to be sure. So can this differentiate between internal and external calls if you use no. So if you use this,
no. Yeah, it would be really sweet. And I actually had that conversation with someone on the product team like a week and a half ago. It was really entertaining because they're like, wow, that's a really neat idea. I was like, we had that feature, I'm not even joking, 7 years ago in Outlook Web Access. So
yeah,
cool
it's kind of actually an ask from some of our executives. So anyway, okay, thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and what I have done for some of those CEO types, what we have done for them is you could do some trickery if you really want to. For unanswered calls, you could dump it, send their calls into like auto attendants built for them and kind of do it through the auto attendant. So there's some ways to kind of fake it, but you're building a lot of extra stuff to do something kind of basic today.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I do want to point out with this is that a lot of the information that's in here directly matches what you have in the PowerShell, because again, these are using the same APIs. The information that's being sent to their servers is going to be exactly the same. So if I ran a fiddler trace when I run this commandlet inside of Teams PowerShell, I'm going to see this exact same payload coming from that the TAC is sending to that API. And if you are wanting to play around with the APIs, the other thing I do want to mention is I'm not going to show the whole thing, but you do need to show your authorization token in that request, or it will not.
Come on, Eric, just show it. I'm sure no one will copy it and just attack your tenant.
Yeah, I know they kind of can't really copy that. It's going to expire before. But
just kidding.
Anything else anybody wants to see with call forwarding else? I'm kind of guessing no. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So also we have Pstn one-to-one recording and transcripts now available. Previously, that was just in Teams to Teams, Teams meetings. They're now expanding this to Pstn calls. So if you actually look back in your call history, if you have recording and transcripts enabled, you can read the transcript and go back and find things or search things from your different calls and conversations that you did have. If you have not had a chance to play around with the transcript feature of Teams, it works very well.
It does. And
Surprisingly low.
Yeah, and for the Uber nerds, I'm pretty sure they announced this publicly. If not, hit the magic mute button in your head for the recording. There is an API coming for transcripts. So you're going to be able to, via Graph, it'll be a publicly supported Graph API to download the transcripts.
Yep.
So for people who are trying to do fun things programmatically, that's coming.
Mm-hmm. Microsoft also added roaming bandwidth policies to Teams. So this works the same way that you're going to be defining your network subnets for E911 and other things within Teams, where it's going to look at what subnet you're on, what external IP address you're on, and figure out where you are in the organization. So it does require that you do build that network topology out inside of Teams. But what it does is pretty much allow you to limit the media bit rate of your Teams client based on where you are inside the network. So if you've got in a network, you've got 1 megasecond, you've got 100 users. Sorry, 10 megasecond. I'll make it better. 10 megasecond. Yeah, we're going to make it something more likely. You may want to limit the media bit rate because if you've got 50 users now wanting to try to use that bandwidth, you're going to run into Teams quality issues. So by limiting that media bit rate, you can at least preserve some of that bandwidth and potentially save poor calls in your environment. As Richard noted, this is very similar to CAC or Call Mission Control that was in Skype for Business Server. So if you are familiar with that, this is very similar to that. It's just their new naming, new branding behind it in for Teams.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that this feature is simultaneously rolling out to both consumer and DoD, GCC, GCC High, and I think EDU as well. So this is a big ask that's hitting all of the platforms simultaneously. That doesn't happen super often. So,
yep. Hopefully one day we get roaming dial planes or something. That'd be great.
Now you're asking for a lot.
Yep. So another one that Microsoft added, this is actually a little bit of an older one, but we wanted to kind of dive into this and showcase how you could actually use this in your organization. We've only just kind of showed just a generic screenshot from Microsoft, but this is a voice-enabled channel. So what this does is this allows you to take any channel inside of Teams and be able to bring calling into that. So this is kind of like a poor man's contact center or something like that, where you at least have a small team of people that need to be able to make and receive calls, be able to see that call history be shared across people. Because if you just do a standard call queue in Teams, your individual user is going to see that call history, but you're not going to see that across or any information of who answered those calls and any of your history or anything else. So by bringing this into a Teams channel allows everything to be shared in one area. And then with that, I do have a demo on this. The one thing I do want to point out on this experience is that if you have a user account that is part of a call queue and they are part of a voice-enabled channel, that will only work for that user for the desktop and Mac clients. The user will not get a call go to them if they are in the Teams web client. If they are in a Teams phone, they are not going to see that call. So even though they're part of that voice-enabled channel, and I have a Teams phone sitting next to me and I get an inbound call, I'm only going to see that call on my PC. So keep in mind, there are some limitations about using this that you would not typically have with a standard call queue. I hope that they do change that because, if you have a Teams phone, it kind of defeats the purpose of having that when you're utilizing this functionality. And so with that, I do have a small short demo. And so I'm going to...
As Eric brings this up, one of the reasons I wanted to highlight this is there is a ton of investment coming around this too, right? So to just start getting people more familiar with this concept, because I don't see it used often enough in production, but it's an incredibly useful feature that I think a lot of people don't even realize that it's there.
For sure. So in this environment, this is just my personal lab. Kind of set up a scenario that is potentially useful in some organizations like an IT support or something of that nature, where you would have multiple tiers of tech support. So you've got a tier 1, which is kind of like your level 1 people, but then, if after 30 seconds or a minute, if nobody in T1 answers, then it rolls out to T2, which usually includes all the T1 users and then all the tier 2, and just kind of gradually gets bigger as things go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an inbound call and kind of show you what this looks like. This is the calls tab that's in the actual Teams channel itself. You can make a phone call here. And what's also really cool about this is that you can mask the outbound call for users that are utilizing this functionality by Teams channel. So for example, if you've got, users that are working in your tech support department, as in this example, you don't want them calling users from their personal number or something like that, side. You want them going out via shared number so that when somebody calls it back, they get put back into this queue. You can either do main numbers, you can change it by Teams channel. The possibilities are endless, but it is a really nice feature so that the calls all come back to one place. So if I do go over here and I do make a inbound call, I'm going to call in from my Skype environment. It's just going to play a quick message and say, hey, you're in the call queue. Pull music down here. So as you can see, this call is coming in right now to the tech support tier 1 call queue. This queue is configured to have 2 tiers. After 30 seconds, just for the purpose of the demo, it will roll over to tier 2. It does have a 15-second alert time, so now we're at about 18 seconds right now. Here at 30 seconds, this will roll over and you'll start seeing that the call will be coming into T2. Give me 1 second.
And the great thing, as this is ringing, the great thing is on the back end, this is literally just a call queue setup. So there's nothing special you need to do to get this to ring into the channel, really.
Yep. So now it's now rolled over to tier 2. I want to get this person off hold. So let's go ahead and accept this call. So I just went ahead and accepted this call. It's a standard Teams call window, but you'll see, it's this person for RACQTST2. So this is just my internal naming, whatever you name it is going to show here. And you're going to have that call. As soon as I hit leave and I end this call, what's going to happen is if I go look at tech support tier 2 and I go to calls, you'll see I now have a history that shows that Eric Marsi answered this call. Sorry, not Eric Marsi. ZP Teams user 1 answered this call from Eric Marsi at this time. So you now have a running list of who answered what call and at what time. From here, you can call back, and you could also have it, record that this person called this number back. So if you had a missed call, they can call it just back right there. The other thing that's nice about this is that you have the ability to turn yourself on or off from a call queue. So for example, if I wanted to say, okay, I don't want to receive calls right now from tech support 1, I can flip this little toggle right here. And now I'm no longer part of that queue to make and receive those calls. Now you can control that from an organization where agents can't unenroll from this. It's at the choice of, when you set up the call queue itself. But if you do have that functionality enabled, you can do that. The other really nice thing is that when a user is online, you can see all the people right here that are signed into that queue. So when you're just doing a standard call queue, you have zero visibility into that. You have no idea if anybody's even signed in that queue or what they're doing. But when you're using these voice-enabled channels, you do have that functionality there. And then the other thing I do want to show is if I dial out to my Skype environment here, apparently Numlock's not working. So if I dial out to my Skype environment, what's going to happen is I have a few options right here. If I hit call, it's going to default to dialing out via my work number, which is 9834. That's the number I have assigned to this user account inside of Teams. But this call queue, I've also added a calling line identity to it. So you can actually add multiple if you wanted to. You could have more than one. It's not just limited to one calling line identity. But I can also say call this user at using this as my from number. So if I make this phone call real quick, I actually is probably going to fail. Sorry. Joys of this demo. But if I make that phone call, it's going to go out as the number that I have assigned to that resource account instead of my individual user's number. So it is really cool to see that and add that to the voice enabled channels. Does anybody have any questions?
Mike is wondering, can anyone in the team answer? Or is it focused on the channel only? Remember, these are standard channels, which means the membership is at the team level. So it's any team member can do this. I would need to go back. I am 99% sure private channel. Yeah, no. I was gonna say private channels can't be selected for this feature, if I remember correctly.
Shared channels will work for this feature.
Shared does?
I believe shared does.
Well, I'm gonna go find out right now.
Here, I'll actually tell you right now because I actually have this already set up.
You have it open?
Yeah.
So this is all done under voice, and then under call queues. When you pick it, you under call answering, which is on the left once it loads.
So what
you
I'm gonna
pick
do is
the
I'm gonna
team.
strip this.
Yep. You have a shared
See if
channel.
I have. Oh, I got to search for it's weird. You got to search for the team first and then for the channel. And when it says add a channel at the top.
So the UI could use a little bit of work.
Yep. All right, so
yeah, you can, Krista, yeah, in the log, you can see who answered the call. So you see that information after the fact.
Yep. It'll let me add it to a shared channel. Yep.
All right,
so you can add this to shared channels.
Sweet.
That may be NDA, everybody. I don't know.
Exactly.
This is not a production tenant, so you're seeing it here first.
Sorry, we broke it.
Hey, Richard and Eric. Krista also asked, "Can you tell which team member answers?"
Yes.
After the fact, you can. I don't think you can tell before,
No.
right? While the call
not
is in
before,
progress.
but after the call is completed, you can see right here in the center that my test user ZP Teams user 1 answered that call. Yep. Hey, good to know about the shared channels thing.
Yeah, exactly. Really I was thinking the same thing. Now I'm gonna go. Do I have a? Oh yeah, I do have a. I was gonna try it with a private channel.
I'd be actually surprised if it works with a private channel because I don't know. Those aren't technically searchable.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
So yeah, I'd be surprised that works with a private channel.
I'll loop back after I test it.
Awesome. Okay, everybody. So let's go ahead and minimize this. And we're going to start looking at what's new with Teams meetings. Does anybody have any other questions regarding calling voice before we go on? Just want to make sure.
Looks like we're good.
Take that as a no. Cool.
Yep.
And then Richard, do you want to? I'll start with this.
You can start with that. Yeah.
Okay. So another new thing with Teams meetings is webinar invites. So this now includes calendar invites, so it's easy to join a webinar. Where with Teams meetings, you add that meeting information to a standard just meeting appointment, whatever you have inside of your Outlook calendar. You can now add webinar join to that as well. So instead of having to go to a link and try to remember, you have all that now as a standard meeting invite, but it is a webinar then. This helps drives better attendance and other things with inside of Teams.
And then for our GCC folks, there were a ton of webinar things that were just released as well. So in addition to having webinar before GCC and all the levels of GCC, and now have the attendance dashboard. They have the webinar capabilities. I don't think this invite piece is rolled out to them, but so as normal, they're always a little behind. But the webinar is now in GCC.
Another fun one that I've actually been, I started getting these emails a little bit ago. I'm like, oh, what's going on here? So it's actually a new feature. The meetings are now going to have auto expire on the recordings. So typically before, people were recording meetings 4 years down the line, well, make it more real, 3 years down the line. They've still got meetings sitting on their OneDrive. It's taking up space, it's taking up storage. They probably are likely not to ever go back and actually look at that unless they have moved it onto another folder or organized it in SharePoint, something like that. So now meeting owners, so anybody who actually scheduled that meeting is going to get a notification that says, hey, your meeting recording is going to expire in X amount of days. Make sure you save a copy of this, move it somewhere. But if you don't, it's going to be deleted from OneDrive and SharePoint. So I have seen those emails come through on my side. It actually is quite nice having that because you don't got to worry about cleaning up your Teams meeting recordings folder or anything in your OneDrive anymore.
And keep in mind that these are all controlled via policy. So about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, right, they introduced the policy to record or to manage how long these are recorded by default. I think the new number is 180 days, question mark. I think that was what it was. They changed it. It was 90.
It was a lot lower before.
Yeah, it was 90, then they changed it to 180 if I remember correctly. But the key is you can go check on it. Do know if you've got someone using an A1 license for any reason, that's the very super low end license. It's 30 days. So does it apply to meetings prior to the setting? So what I have found, yeah, the answer is yes to that. So It's kind of weird how it works. I'll be honest.
Be careful turning it on because you may have
yeah
some issues there. I think it may actually be on by default.
They did change it to being on by default, correct? Yeah.
Okay.
So if you haven't looked, it is in the meeting policy. I'll pull it up again real quick. And to answer the question before, private channels cannot be used for that calling feature like I assumed it would not be able to.
Yeah, so the new default expiration is 120 days.
20, yep.
And it is on by default in your environment. So that is right here under the recording and transcriptions area.
Yep. So if you haven't changed or you haven't looked at it, I would recommend taking a moment. And you can via PowerShell. You can't do it in the UI, but via PowerShell, you can set it to -1, which means never expire. So you do have that option from a PowerShell perspective. But the last time I tried it in the UI yelled at me when I tried to put a -1 in there. I don't believe that has changed yet.
We also now have the ability to have a meeting Q&A. So this actually works by using Microsoft Forms inside of your team's meetings. So you can now do a word cloud poll. That's something similar to like, hey, rate your response, but just use one word to describe how you feel about this meeting or something of that nature. And as more responses, let's say in this example on the right, of excited, that excited text is going to get bigger. In case you've not seen those before. So you're going to see all those responses kind of collaged together, but the ones that get the most responses are going to be bigger on that. You have other options such as, multiple choice polls, multiple choice quizzes, word cloud polls, and then open text will be coming in Q2 2022.
Right, that one they just literally announced like this morning.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, if you are familiar with like Skype for Business, we had this back with Skype for Business in a way. Not all the features of this, but we had a similar feature with this. So it is nice to start seeing some of those, get added back into Teams in a more modernist way.
Feature parity.
Yeah, feature parity. Yeah, we had feature parity a couple years ago. So another new thing being added to Teams meetings is high fidelity music mode. And this really allows you to add a richer audio experience when you're doing screen sharing of non-speech content. So that's going to be your music, your videos, anything that you're doing in these examples that Microsoft gave, band class, if you're doing your remote learning in the EDU space, medical signals. This will at least allow you to get a higher quality audio signal for that content. So instead of having to, deal with just standard Teams audio, they do allow you to stream that high quality audio to everybody in that meeting.
And one of the things that what it's doing under the hood is it's really kind of turning off some of the echo cancellation kind of stuff that would normally happen in a Teams meeting, right? Typically we're based on speech. So it's going to try to like take away background music. By turning this on, you're really just saying, right, let more background music in. The bottom note you see there is another item that they just announced literally today. If the Teams client detects that it thinks it hears music in the background, it's going to prompt you and say, hey, we think you're in a space where it would be useful to turn this on. Do you want to turn it on? That kind of stuff.
And that's even like useful, like, when I was on hold with my call queue earlier, it was probably in and out, You're hearing like a choppy bit. This gets rid of that choppy bit.
Yep.
So this fixes that for when you're using that type of stuff. Will there be a venue for emergency auto notification for natural disaster? I have not heard anything on that.
I've never seen anything audio-wise. I mean, so Microsoft does have the app they deployed that you can deploy for group notifications and like mass notifications to an entire company from a Teams perspective. It is, I think it's called the Communicator App.
Hey, Richard, it's called the Company Communicator. So
oh, I was so close.
You were
I was so
close.
I was pulling that like from way
you
back.
were. I was actually impressed. Nice job.
So they do have the Company Communicator App, which is something you deploy, right? It's a bunch of Azure stuff that does magic that allows you to push a Teams notification to 10,000 users or whatever the case is. So I've never seen anything audio wise though. I'll write that down, just see if I could dig up if there's anything. I've never even heard.
I think I've only ever heard of it as like text. It would probably be pretty bad if you did audio like that. I mean, depending on your organization, but it is, something that
you record a message via the company Communicator app that they then plays. No, I doubt it.
It's kind of like those old, when you get a transfer from reception on like an old PBX where they can just be, hey Eric, are you ready for this call, or something just barge right in,
Right.
Yeah, and Jicky, by the way, is adding more to this. So thinking about the 508 community, the accessibility stuff.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Thinking about Teams meetings in general, as far as what you can do with accessibility, closed captioning, those types of things, transcriptions, I think would be a big part of that. So yes.
Yep. Yeah, we did. This was old Skype for Business, but literally there would be no reason you couldn't do this in direct routing in Teams. We had a customer that had a large community of deaf and hard of hearing. So what we did for 911 calls is we actually installed via SIP. They were little SIP gateways, and they were lights that would blink if a 911 call came in and was an emergency in the building. And we did this like 100% through Skype for Business, but it was really just an audio codes SBC and some magic that way. So there's some things you can do from a calling perspective the moment you have direct routing, because you have that SBC and you can just, there's so many fun things you can do from that perspective.
Possibilities are also endless there as well.
Yep. All right.
Another feature that I do personally like is the Mirror My Video function. One of the biggest issues that may come up, especially like if you're doing like a whiteboard scenario where you may not be using like Microsoft Whiteboard or like in capture with the Teams rooms or anything, is if you're just sharing your video and you're holding up a piece of paper and I don't really have any here. I got a pack of playing cards here. Right. If I hold this up without this feature enabled, I'm going to see that backwards text in the bottom right on my preview inside the Teams client. So if I actually just drag my Teams client over here and I hold this up right here, you'll see I can't read what that means. Mm-hmm. So now if I actually go into here into the device settings and I say I want to mirror my video or change how that works, I can now see that in exactly how that text is supposed to be. So I can change which direction my video is based on how you guys see it versus how I see it from my end.
Which is always funky, I think, because I always feel like I'm moving the wrong direction to get in front of the camera when it's reversed too.
Yeah, because you're moving left, you're going right.
I know I can't. My brain can't quite do it right for whatever reason.
Yep, for sure.
I need help. That's really what that boils down to. Broadcast meeting preview. I am a huge fan of this because it works really well. So if you've ever had the desire to live stream from Teams, right? I'd want to live stream into YouTube, into Discord. I was going to last night go dig around and see if I could find the process for like Facebook and stuff. But the idea is that Microsoft has released a app called Custom Streaming. I feel like the marketing team kind of didn't come up with a cool name on this one. I feel like there's a missed opportunity. But you load this app into your meeting, so it's done at the meeting level. And then, as you can see in the screenshot, all you do is you put in the stream URL and the key, and then you go ahead and you start streaming. You do have to turn this on via policy in the meeting policy. This isn't in the UI, so you do have to go to PowerShell to enable live streaming from the PowerShell level. But once you do that, you can then load the app, and anytime you're in the application, just go ahead and punch in those things and off you go. So if you've ever just wanted to, live stream to Twitch from Teams, there you go. Now you have that opportunity. Next slide. share system audio via the web client. This one came just today, actually. It's coming later this year. So from your web client, your Chrome client, you will be able to, when you are sharing your desktop screen, whatever the case is, you're going to have the little checkbox for share your system audio, just like you do in the normal Teams client. You're going to have that via the web client as well. I didn't include a slide for this, but Microsoft did add a bunch of support for Firefox as well for the web client. It's still not quite 100% what Chrome can do, but we're getting closer and closer each time. So much better Firefox support for whoever uses that browser.
Actually, I haven't seen Firefox usage in quite a while, so
I have no clue. I don't know. I don't know the usage. I make that joke. It could be at 90% for all I know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Presenter mode, resize and move. So if you've used presenter mode, it's really cool, right? The idea is while giving a presentation, I can drop my virtual head over the presentation to have that more, rich kind of interaction. So presenter mode, we call it reporter mode or the side-by-side. One of the problems with it was people would always have to find the right spot in their camera so their head was aligned really well. You now will have the ability to change the position from left to right, but also be able to move the size of your head. So if you want to be really big head on the screen, you can make yourself really big, or you can go smaller. But helpful for trying to figure out where from a placement perspective.
Mm-hmm. Richard's favorite topic.
I mean, it's development stuff. So if you're not familiar with Azure Communication Services, these are all now in GA. So under the hood for Teams is a full suite of graph and other APIs that allows you to build your own meeting services. All right. So if you wanted to, you could legitimately, using ACS, you could go build your own Teams client if you really wanted to. I don't know why you would, but you could. But they also support items such as bridging into Teams meetings. Super helpful if you were on a web client and you wanted to bridge into a Teams meeting. Maybe you have a website experience that you want to build. If you want to have SMS texting, you can do that. They now have .NET libraries for all of this information. So there's a rich development opportunity to integrate Teams into other places that have never been before. If you are a Dynamics shop and you have seen some of the absolutely cool stuff that they are doing with Dynamics and Teams integration and calling and all that stuff, that is all ACS under the hood. So the Microsoft team, right, or the Dynamics team is using the Teams team implementation of ACS. How many times can I say Teams team? To kind of bring that all together. So it's really, really cool to be able to see. And one of the big integrations for this that I don't think gets any love is on the next slide. Microsoft has a product called Microsoft Bookings. And this isn't a bookings demo. I'm not going to go through all the stuff there is about bookings. I'm going to steal your screen for half a second. But the general idea with Microsoft Bookings is I create a calendar that I can then assign agents to. So I have this calendar and I could have multiple people. Think of it from, maybe there's an HR perspective. I want to schedule individuals to do interviews for my company. Maybe I want to allow my employees to schedule one-on-ones with me, whatever the case is. So what happens is I can create this calendar, and then I have this bookings API or this URL that if I then go to the bookings URL, I can then share my calendar with people, and anyone can then reserve time on my calendar, right? Because I'm in this case, the only staff member for an hour-long one-on-one meeting. And I could create multiple types of meetings of different lengths and whatever the case is, and I can go through this. The reason I wanted to show this is there's a bookings app inside of Teams. So here I see the same schedule, the same queue, but one of the things that you can do now inside of this is I can create an appointment type. So I've got my one-on-one meeting, but maybe I want to do HR intro meeting. And I could say where it is, and I could put in a message and all this fun stuff. But down below, right here, I have this option for attendees to join from a web browser. And what's going to happen here is by default, if this is turned off, the link that's going to go to that end user is going to be a Teams link, which means that that end user has to have Teams. They have to download the Teams app. They got to do something with Teams, right? Which honestly might create a barrier for someone to get into that meeting. So instead, we have this option for attendees to join from the web browser. And what's going to be sent to them instead of a Teams link is they're going to be sent a virtual visits link. And that virtual visits link, I know it's a shock, but what it is, it's an Azure communication service or an ACS service. So from a mobile phone, I can join via the WebRTC browser right in the mobile client. I don't need to download anything. I don't have to do anything. I'm just joined into the meeting very automagically. So if you've never seen bookings, if you've got an organization that is doing interviews, has an HR process, whatever the case is, and they struggle with individuals, signing up and getting people to register for meetings and all that kind of fun stuff, I would tell you to take a peek at bookings because there's some really cool things you can do with that product. And then, like I said, it just doesn't get a lot of love ever. I don't hear about it much, but maybe it's just because I'm not hanging with the right crowd or something. All right, that was Microsoft Bookings moment. If you have questions about bookings, feel free to ask. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert, but I use it personally for scheduling any meetings. If someone wants to have a meeting with me, I literally send them my bookings URL, and that's what happens. I don't know if anyone uses Find Time. I don't, right? Like I've legitimately flipped to bookings. Maybe Find Time's better for like.
I still see some people use Find Time. I still see people use it, but it's primarily switching like over to bookings now that people are.
Okay, well, Max uses it all the time, so. That's the beauty of Micro. There are multiple tools that can get the same thing done, which some people hate, but I love because they each have their own kind of unique spin that will work better for one person versus the other. So
now the real curiosity: which one gets deprecated first?
That was mean. Don uses Cortana. Oh, I've got a Cortana shot coming up in a slide here soon.
Who all had a Cortana, like a Harman Kardon and Voip? That's the real question.
I have one in the closet, actually.
You mean a paperweight now?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Another thing that Microsoft is adding is being able to join meetings across clouds. Previously, if you had a GCC High, DoD cloud, whatever, and you wanted to join from a commercial cloud tenant, you had to join via the web client. They are now enabling that functionality via the full Teams client, as long as anonymous users are allowed to join meetings in the GCC, DoD, GCC High tenant in those scenarios. So it does have to be enabled, but if that is enabled, it will allow them to do that.
Which is great, right? Like it was a kind of a disaster before, I'll be honest.
Yep. Virtual desktop environments. So the people that are using like Citrix or shared workstations and via centralized server, via Azure Virtual Desktop also can now detect what is and who is speaking for real-time captions. This was not available before, and this is now available in VDI environments. So looking at past what's new in meetings, let's look at what's new in Teams devices. Well, I'm just going to say devices, not necessarily Teams devices. Previously, we did talk about SIP gateway devices, and that was back in end of November, being the summer where they launched the preview of the SIP gateway service. That's going to be your Cisco phones with the multi-platform firmware, your Polycom VVX series, your Yealing T series, and then your AudioCodes 400 HD, so non-Teams certified or native phones. Previously, some of those worked with Teams via 3-pip gateway, but going forward, 3-pip is going to be killed off in 2023. It is official now. It was, hey, we're going to put this out indefinitely. It is now July 2023 for the end of 3-pip. So if you are utilizing 3-pip, you do want to look at using SIP gateway. Personally, if you're using SIP gateway devices, just keep in mind that there is no E911. It is all static 911 assignment based on your DID. So the big thing I do want to push out there is about SIP Gateway and 3PIP primarily is that there is no dynamic E911 in those environments.
They're fantastic though for the cheap, dumb phone kind of scenarios, right?
Manufacturing warehouse.
They're fantastic.
Where you replace those phones, not even warehouse, like a manufacturing facility. I used to work for a rubber manufacturer a couple of years ago, and I mean there was phones out there that we were replacing every 30 days. I mean it was just piling through phones, and spending money on Teams native phones where you could buy refurbished VVXs on the cheap. I mean it makes sense in those environments.
Yep. Now,
one of the big things with this is that expanding from just that standard hardwired Teams desk phone, Microsoft is expanding into wireless DECT devices. For those not familiar, DECT devices are kind of like your old cordless home phones. You could walk outside your house, still have wireless service over those devices. It's not necessarily running over Wi-Fi. It's running over DECT to a base station for it to actually get its service. That base station is what's actually registering to the SIP gateway service. It's not the actual handset in the phone. So the SpectraLink models there, the ASCOM and also the Poly Rove and base stations are all being brought into SIP Gateway. That is not GA yet, but that is coming soon to SIP Gateway for the public.
I was gonna say, it should be worth noting the SpectraLink actually don't have a base station, so that they've built the base into the handset itself. So that instance, yeah, you do actually register the handset.
Yep.
It's running the full SIP
Just
stack.
know that at that point you're limited by Wi-Fi range.
Correct.
So,
yep. Exactly. Yep.
So it's not really like a DECT phone. Then at that point, it's more like a
it's kind of a weird. Yeah, I don't know why they call it a DECT phone because I agree it's not. But hey, whatever.
Another feature that popped up and then was later removed, I'm not sure if it's back in the public ranks or not yet, is the ability to cast from your Teams client to a Teams room. So if you actually looked in the top of your Teams client and the little three dots, there's an option that popped up sometimes for cast. I believe if you're part of TAP or Ring 1.5, you are going to see that functionality still there. I'm not sure if they brought that back to the public. What happened is they launched it here like a week or two ago, something like that, and pretty much it didn't work as expected. They rolled the feature back and then it just disappeared from the public rings. So if anybody's in Ring 4 and public ring, let us know if you do have that functionality. But pretty much what this does, it allows you to share your screen or window directly to a Teams room without having, to start a meeting or anything of that nature. It just allows you to say, hey, I'm near this Teams room. I want to share my screen. If it doesn't detect what room, you can say, I want to go to this, project to this room. And share your screen right from the Teams client to that Teams room. Useful in scenarios like environments that may or may not have had a barcode click share before, where you had to plug a little device in. Then I want to present. Now you can just do that right from your Teams client.
Quick poll: does anyone like the fact that they moved all the settings under that stupid three dots in the client? I was looking for other people's thoughts on it. I think it's terrifying, but
I'm always switching between the little profile icon and the three dots. I'm flipping between them constantly. Okay, where's this at? Is it in this one? Is it in this one? So I'm curious if anybody else here, throw in the chat your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I always like to know, because it's one of those things that, I remember when they did it. I remember sitting on the call saying this is gonna be a problem, and everyone's like, no, it'll be fine. I'm like, I'm gonna come back with like real people's usage of this silly three dots and tell you you're all wrong. All right. Sorry, I derailed this. This isn't a conversation about three dots.
I will find the article about July 2023 for you about 3PIP. They originally had that as October 2023. Then it was moved with COVID when COVID hit. Okay, we're moving that out. We don't know the specific date yet, but it's going to be past 2023. And then they backtracked and okay, hey, it's July 2023 now. So yeah, really fun.
3:30. So okay, so it's been a month apparently. We'll see.
Yeah, time flies like that, I guess. Lose what day it is. Hey, we're almost in May, guys. It's 2021.
Yeah, to answer, yes, Michael, you are correct. There is some Bluetooth pieces that go with that, with the MTRs, right? And that also has the low bandwidth or low frequency Bluetooth.
Bluetooth LE, low energy.
There you go. Thank you. The low energy, thank you. That's what controls some of the other features, like when you walk into a room, it knows you're in the room, all those kind of things.
Yep.
Hey guys, did you see the question from Brian Call? With our company going to the mixed work from home, mixed office, love to hear your opinions on conference room technology to look at.
There's some equipment coming up that's I will share my thoughts on the tail end of this.
Perfect.
I have some pretty strong thoughts when it comes to the hybrid workplace and who you should pick, but that's just me. Go for it.
So the other one that's coming to Teams phones and the Teams phones app is Walkie-Talkie. So Walkie-Talkie has been around for Android, iOS as functionality. So for those not familiar, Walkie-Talkie is pretty much like you expect, like a walkie-talkie. You press a single button, you can talk, and it automatically broadcasts to everybody that's part of that Teams channel that is enabled for Walkie-Talkie. And then if somebody else presses, they're not going to hear any other responses, but then they're being broadcast around across that Teams channel as well. So this has been on mobile phones. We've got ruggedized handsets that are out in the marketplace now also that are utilizing the walkie-talkie. So, you know, I've seen that in the gas and oil industry as well, where people are utilizing that function. So now they are bringing that to Teams phones. So if you've got somebody that's more of an office assistant or somebody in the office, they now have a single button to press that they can talk with all the people that are out, maybe potentially in the field, right from their Teams phone. This is enabled via an app setup policy, and apparently I can't spell the word setup either.
That's all right. This is the old Nextel push to talk feature, like legitimately, and it works great.
If you're in a meeting and your schedule is busy and your calendar doesn't postpone the message, if you are in an active call, I don't know if the Teams phone or not. The desktop client or mobile phone, you're probably going to hear it. In all honesty,
yeah,
unless you're D&D,
right?
It's going to probably pop through.
Yeah, I have to test that one. Yeah, yep. Let me write that down. I've used it. I've just never done it in a high enough volume to think about.
Walkie-talkie cannot be enabled into a PA system because
no, it'd be really cool.
It'd be really cool. Yes, very cool. But this is again Teams native phone, and unless you want to, I mean, more power to you. If you want to take a Teams phone, hack it up. Mm-hmm. And you want to get into a PA system, I would love to see that. That would be awesome.
It wouldn't be that hard. Now that you think about it, take a phone, take the handset off. I mean, cut some cables. I mean, I bet you I could get there.
Plug into an amplifier, put a diode on it so it doesn't get any backfeed.
Oh, yeah.
Done.
Oh, man, there's a lot of nerdism going on now.
But there's a way, indeed.
I agree.
Push to talk work, yes.
Yeah.
So some of these phones that I was talking about with the ruggedized phones in the marketplace out there today, they have buttons on those phones that you can dedicate to the push to talk feature. So a lot like the Nextel phones that you used to have back in the day. Oh, that was like the coolest feature. I thought it was like when I was younger. I mean, I was more or less a kid back then, but make Richard fall over, but I thought it was the coolest thing, just be able to be like, hey, whatever. Multiple people are hearing, you know, what you're saying. But yeah, they do have that functionality with inside of Teams.
I need someone to go look up when Nextel released push to talk.
Yeah, if it's around 2007, I was in 4th grade.
Yeah, that was what I want to figure out. How old was Eric when it actually released?
Oh man.
All right, next up. So new partner. So if you've seen Neat before, they've been in the Zoom space for quite a while. Now their room system, I'm using air quotes here, room system, the Neat bar, the Neat display. These are now certified for Teams. What's pretty cool about this, the one on the right, which is the screen, is kind of like a Surface Hub kind of weird thing going on there. But the other one, the actual Neat bar itself, where you see the bar and the panel, it's all running Android under the hood. There's no cables on that Neat bar on the left-hand side. It is 100% wireless from the display to the camera. The camera just has an HDMI then into the TV. It snaps on the top of it. I had an opportunity to see that in action. It worked really, really well. Like it was a very interesting solution. And a nice addition to the room display. world.
Mhm.
Teams panel, knock knock. This came out about a month ago. So if you have room panels, as we get ready for this more hybrid world, right? I can display a room panel outside the meeting door. It'll show me the calendar. I can reserve the room for it. A feature they added now is called knock knock. So there's people in the room, they are running long on their meeting or they're at their time. You can click a button that says you are here so that the people in the room are then notified on screen that your reservation has expired and there are people outside the door waiting to get in. Oftentimes, if you got nice glass doors, you probably already knew that, but if you didn't, then you kind of, now you can tell people. So
they need to add a button so when you press it, it just goes beep, just like does like a loud audible
right, exactly,
buzzer.
I don't know. There's nothing to control bandwidth. Jicky asked about PowerPoint and video bandwidth. For now, we talked about the CAC-like policies before for
I
doing.
believe that's just media, not necessarily screen share.
Yeah, I do too.
I'll go back and look. Media.
Yeah, I think it's voice media only. It's not the sharing. So, but I'll go see if I can find anything. There's a ton more devices that have come out. So Dell's got a new speakerphone. Yealink, if you've never used the Yealink stuff, their stuff is pretty interesting. It's lower cost than Poly equipment typically is, but super similar setups. Like that Yealink conference phone literally looks like the old Trio from Polycom. Like they literally just stole the patent and then created it. The Logitech Roommate is a new device. This one I've also had an opportunity to play with. It's an Android-based device, so if you've had to deploy like little Intel NUCs into conference rooms to be able to load stuff on, you can replace those out with these. These are Teams managed devices. They enroll inside of Teams management for all the updates and all that kind of fun stuff. So if you pair a Roommate with a Rally Cam or some other stuff, you can get some really cool experiences from that.
One thing about the Roommate that I personally like, and it's kind of one of the I guess the elephant in the room when it comes to Android devices, is that Android devices typically have a smaller lifespan with regards to supportability. We've seen this with some of our Teams devices, such as like the Polycom Trio 8800. I mean, it's an old device. They made it work with Teams, but it is no longer getting Teams app updates anymore. If you have the old Teams app, it's a best case if it works or not anymore. It may work, it may not. Microsoft doesn't care. And with Android, one of the things that we run into, especially around room systems, is that we've got these camera bars, the Rally bars. We've got all these Android MTR08 devices that as soon as the SoC, the chipset that is running those devices, is no longer able to be supported by the latest version of Android or whatever is required for certification for Teams, it's not going to get updates anymore. So correct. By having, like with the Intel NUCs, the MTRW, we haven't had any phases out. So even if you've got an old smart dock, from way back when, those still work today. But with the Android devices, there's a chance that those will all potentially be phased out. I mean, it's not even potential; it will eventually one day be phased out. So by taking the compute out of those bars, and if you want an all Android environment, so you don't want Teams rooms on Windows, you just want Teams rooms on Android. By bringing that out, you've now just got a compute unit, so that in 5 years, say, if that roughly 5 years, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 3 to 5 years, somewhere around there. If that device is no longer supported, instead of having to replace your camera bar, all your audio equipment, everything in your room, you just have to replace that compute. And that's one thing I want to just really point out with the Roommate there.
Yeah, and that goes back. I think it was Brian asked the question about room kind of systems, right? So I echo what Eric says. I have been telling people, although the bars look really cool, I have this fear, right, that they're going to go away sooner than later because we're Android 13 is coming out. A lot of these devices are running like
Android
9 or 10, right? So as you progress along, right, like some of the early like the Trio you talk about and some of the audio codes phones, like those were running Android 6. So Microsoft at some point in time is like, we can't support that version of Android anymore for security, for this, for that. We don't care. We're gone, right? But if you think about it from a mental perspective, that was, 4 years ago, 5 years ago when that device came out. To be able to go to your, whoever for budgetary purposes to say, yeah, I know we just spent, 20 grand on this conference room. I just need to replace it all again. Usually don't get a great response for that. So I like to separate my camera and the compute, right? So a roommate like this works really well. An Intel Nook works really well. Even like the Yeelink room system you see up above also has that separated out. So, right, you see the compute on the left-hand side. If I had to swap that out for something else, I could later on and still reuse all of the other pieces that are there. I would say, think about how you can protect your investment for the camera and all that other stuff going forward. That's the best advice I give to people when they start thinking about room systems.
One nice thing also is, like, if you had, let's say, for example, a Logitech Rally Phone, this is all what if speculation 5 years from now, and you use that as MTROA. If MTRW in 5 years is still here, I mean, again, this is all a what if. That device still works as a USB camera and speakerphone. So you can still potentially reutilize it. So depending on what device you have, it depends on that. So just, make sure you're aware of that. Typically, prior to the Logitech Roommate, I have always recommended MTRW for meeting rooms at pretty much most scales, unless it's like a really tiny executive office or something. Just because you have that somewhat protection of your investment. Plus, you also get a lot of the features first MTRW. Direct Teams, direct guest join, you name it. But the Roommate is kind of, for those environments where they want Android, they don't want to deal with any type of Windows device, and they want to go from there.
I was going to say, and Eric, the acronym, the MTRW, I know what it means. Not everyone on this call might.
Okay. Microsoft Teams Rooms on Windows. So MTROA is Microsoft Teams Rooms on Android. So there's two different variants there.
Yep. Yeah. So I get some people want to have that embedded experience with the camera. That's why they look at Android. Others, right, don't. So a few more devices that are worth calling out. So on the left, Crestron, something called Hdmi. I'd never seen this before, so I've no experience with it, so I don't know anything about it. I thought I'd call it out. The other two I have seen and I've used. The Sennheiser Team Connect I'm a big fan of Sennheiser products. They sound fantastic. It's a standard hockey puck kind of thing, but it sounds great. It does have Cortana integration, so if you love Cortana, there you go. If you are doing large rooms, and you want to get the equipment off of the table, they do have ceiling mounted speakers now and mics that are certified for Teams. And if you've been in a room with one of these ceiling mounted mics, yes, they're going to cost more, but there is something about the sound quality that is just spectacular in those rooms. So both the mic and the speakers are mounted in the ceiling. In most of those cases, and you'd be astonished how well they work. So
the cheaper solution is like a Logitech Rally kit with the speaker pods with the ceiling mounts.
Yep.
You're not going to get as good of quality as one of these. I mean, they're very expensive. They are not cheap. Right. They've got they have their own dedicated audio equipment, so you got to have a 19-inch rack to mount the stuff in to control these. So it's not just 100%. Standard plug a USB in. No, there's a lot more to these from your standard just room solution too.
Yeah, those are the ceiling mount is typically what I end up seeing happen maybe like in a CEO's office or their conference room, that kind of stuff, right? Because they're very important, so they get all the cool, expensive stuff.
Yep.
Hey, gentlemen, time check, 10 minutes.
Okay,
yeah, I think we've got like 3 slides left.
All right.
Yep.
Perfect.
This one is actually one that I'm very happy about. Teams Rooms on Windows had the present button removed, and it was replaced by Cortana. Nobody used it. Nobody used it. Simply put, I mean, just being completely honest, nobody used it. Teams meeting rooms are designed to be one-touch meeting join. It's very easy to walk in there and press join. I don't even want to deal with press the Cortana button. Hey, Cortana, join my meeting. I just want to press join. They're just So present is now the share present is back now, but it is rebranded to share. So they changed some of the wordings around between meet, call, and share. And is back now as share, and then Cortana was moved there to the bottom. If you have no meetings here, Cortana would be in the bottom left, and it would reorganize based on how the room is set up.
Yep.
Just quick updates on Teams rooms on Android. You now have the ability to set custom wallpapers from the TAC. Well, not custom wallpapers. You're able to control the wallpaper, but no custom wallpapers yet. Custom wallpapers potentially may come in the future. They've got improved meeting experiences now on Teams rooms on Android. Again, Teams rooms on Android is typically behind on what Teams rooms on Windows is.
Mm-hmm.
You've got reactions now, and then the other big one is that you have HDMI ingest support. So typically HDMI ingest was just there on Teams rooms on Windows. The port's there on your Teams rooms on Android, but it never did anything. It was never built in and never supported. That is coming to MTROA. And then for Teams rooms on Windows, you now have the ability to do far end camera control. So for an example, if you want to move the PTZ, so PTZ is pan tilt zoom. So if you have a PTZ capable Teams rooms camera, you can move that camera around remotely instead of requiring an in-room device or something of that nature. They did update the calling app to have a new UI because previously it was just kind of like packed together in a way. They now have it nicely where if you hit press the call button, you now get a center dial pad. It actually looks really nice. Meet Now was also updated within the Teams app, and then they've also added conditional access support with Azure AD with Teams rooms on Windows.
All right, last section is what's new with management. I'm going to fly through it because there's four things here. So the first one is if you really like devices and you want to buy handsets and all that kind of fun stuff, you can purchase your items directly through the Teams Admin Center now. So they built a store inside of the Teams Admin Center. What's really happening under the hood is you're getting sent off to Unified Communications, who's handling this actual action for you on their behalf. Microsoft's not really selling you a camera. But you do have that option. So if you're looking for equipment, it is there. The next item is, you can see it on this screen, but the next one, there's a search box that was added to the top of the Teams Admin Center. This is a global search. This works really well. Teams Admin Center, like 2 years ago, wasn't hard to navigate because there was like 4 features. Now there's like 4,000 features, it feels like. So trying to find the user or the team or whatever the case is buried amongst all the settings is getting harder and harder. So phase 1 is done and going out the door. It lets you search for like users, teams, apps, that kind of stuff. The next phase is going to expand this into policies. So I need to change the recording policy. You're going to literally be able to type recording. It's going to show you which policies have recording in it. You can select it. It's a really nice feature from an admin perspective. Next up is export and download. If you've ever tried to export anything out of the Teams Admin Center, you knew that you had to click the button and sit there patiently and wait and never go anywhere else, because if you did, you lost your export, and that was unfortunate. And you had to do it again and again and again and again and again. Basically, they have their own download center. And the last one is, this one's simple, but it is a huge deal in my mind because it just makes life easy. If you go to a user now and you click on the Teams button, it will show you all the teams that user is a member of, and it'll tell you what their role is, and you can change their role from a single spot. It's super, super stupid easy, but it is so amazing to have that because you did not have a way to find this information easily before.
It is actually really nice having this, and I just quickly share my screen here.
Yeah.
I mean, I can just easily say I want this person to be an owner. Done.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Sometimes it is the simplest stuff. That's it. That was the last thing. There's 5 minutes left. Questions. You've all been great so far. Lots of questions in the chat.
Yes. Jicky was actually asking about that push to talk walkie-talkie thing, and as far as a device, if they actually have a plunger versus not being.
Yeah, let me find. There's a good list of them that I saw at one point in time. I'm seeing if I can find it real quick. Of all.
Yeah, we're in an environment. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're in an environment where, because of the security nature of the work we do, they're now telling us we can't use the headsets that we have, that you can push the button and then activate it. But now they say, well, there's got to be a headset out there that's just push to talk only, where it cannot be deactivated or switched to push to mute. It just has to be push to talk. And that's because of the work we do. Thanks.
Richard, Eric, have you done anything with Blue Parrot?
I have not, no.
Right.
I know about
Because
them, but I have not done anything.
Because I'm wondering if that's a possibility with that checking.
Yeah. So, oh, here we go. There it is.
We'll look at that.
So this link, I just found it. So this is the Walkie-Talkie app that needs to be installed. It goes through everything I just threw in the chat. And then about midway down, they have the Walkie-Talkie devices. They have both the Blue Parrot that Don was talking about before, and then some of those Zebra devices might also potentially fit as well. So
cool, thank you.
It sounds like an environment with like TSG secure phones or something, where you have like positive off-hook security.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So I would go there. But yeah, Blue Parrot, Zebra, those are going to be your two favorites, I think.
One little quick chat. I was digging behind me real quick. I will have a blog post up soon. This is just a little prototyping breadboard. If you guys do want a hardware push to talk button for Teams, I will have the code on my website here soon.
Nice.
Physical button on the floor. That's what we
I actually built two different modes. I built cough mode and push to talk mode. So cough mode, you press it, it mutes you, and then you let go, it unmutes you. Right. Fun stuff there.
I like it.
I love cough mode. Take that one. All right.
Any other questions? If not, throw them in the chat.
Good job, guys.
Survey.
Yes, please. That's what you see up on the screen, guys. Appreciate your time today. I'm just going to take you guys out spotlight. And also announce the winner for today's, I should say this session's $25. And let me get that up. And who actually got it? Mike Brown. Thank you, sir. I'm going to need your email address. If you could throw it in chat, I would really appreciate that. And then I'm also going to throw in here the links, direct links to the other sessions. If you're not wanting to stay in this particular session, I will throw those in here so that you guys can jump to those sessions if you need to. Otherwise, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Eric. Great session. And I'm going to stop the recording and we're good.